Next up will be the panel discussion on transforming the next-gen restaurant franchise with cloud kitchens, moderated by Ms. Hsien Naidu, founder and CEO at Stream Consulting. Hsien and her panelists will take us through the key operation costs business owners need to take note of in consideration of the cloud kitchen model and technology. Over to you, Hsien.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Transforming the Next-Gen Restaurant Franchise with Cloud Kitchens. Today, we have the privilege to have some of the very, very experienced F&B players with us, and we get to find out their take on the cloud kitchen and how they leverage it in their businesses. To start, let me introduce them. With us here today, we have Mr. Kian Peng, advisor to the Social Kitchen, Catherine Goh, General Manager of Santan Restaurant Malaysia, and we've got Joey Lee with us as well, the founder of Poke Theory. Instead of having me introduce them in great detail, let's have them share a little bit about themselves and the business they are in. Mr. Kian Peng, would you like to get the ball rolling for us?
Hi. Thanks, Hsien. I'm Kian Peng here. I'm Kian Peng, the advisor for the Social Kitchen. So basically, the Social Kitchen is first social enterprise that runs cloud kitchen in Singapore. So what do we do with the Social Kitchen is that we tie up with all other F&B players in Singapore together to run a cloud kitchen which empowers special needs or people from the underprivileged group. So instead of the F&B setting up our own kitchens in other sites, what we do is that we partner with them to run some of the sites with F&Bs. For example, we tie with some of the prata shops, to expand. Instead of they taking up their own space and then they running the space on their own, we help them run the space. So what they do is that they just focus on the menu, the ideation of the menu, the creation of the menus, while we focus on taking orders and doing the managing of the platform, delivery platform for them. So essentially, this is what we do. So we create an ecosystem where F&B have no time to do good, to come together, do good using our platform, as well as doing a sustainable business. So that is very important for them. And the other things that we are driving is we are also driving sustainable, we are advocate for sustainable food. Also a plant-based food. So what we want to do is that we want to create a very sustainable planet powered by the sustainable workforce, which in this case are the underprivileged group.
Wow, what a rewarding engagement you have there. So with you preferring to be called Kian Peng, I shall then address Ms. Catherine Goh as Catherine. Catherine, General Manager of Santan Restaurant, would you like to share a little bit more about what you do and how the cloud kitchen blends in with your business?
Sure, thanks, Hsien. My name is Catherine. I am the GM for Santan Restaurant. Santan is actually a franchise restaurant brand under AirAsia. So we started off as in-flight catering department in AirAsia, and now we have 12 restaurants within Klang Valley in Malaysia. We actually expanded during the pandemic. So a lot of restaurants have decided, to just take a break during the pandemic, but we went the opposite way because we kind of pivoted the business and found an opportunity in between. So if you have flown with AirAsia, you would probably have tried our very famous Nasi Lemak. And if you haven't, now you can get this famous dish from any of our Santan restaurants on ground. Yeah.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Mr. Joey Lee. Joey, the founder of Poke Theory, would you care to give us a little bit more information about what the Poke Theory does and how the cloud kitchen fits in?
Hey guys, so my name is Joey. I'm the founder of Poke Theory alongside with my sister Vanessa. We are a fast casual health concept specializing in poke bowls as our main sales, as well as juices, acai bowls, and healthy snacks. We're about 5.5 years old and completely franchise-centric. So we currently have 14 locations that are live in Singapore and 13 of them are franchise. And that's how we plan to expand moving forward as well. When COVID happened, we were in the midst of expansion, and then it was kind of like a extra, like a new option, a new style. It really disrupted the industry because everybody was just dispersed back at home. But yeah, with cloud kitchens, then we were willing to take a chance and try areas that we previously thought that our concept would not have fit. And right now, basically, we're in 6 cloud kitchen locations already. Yeah. So during COVID, that was the predominant mode of expansion, even though we still had 1 or 2 brick-and-mortar stores. But largely, COVID drove the cloud kitchen model, which we are very much a part of.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure you all agree with me that our esteemed panelists are going to have a lot to share with us as we pick their minds and their brains for what they can share with us with regards to the developments of the cloud kitchen and how that fits with franchising. Across the world, cloud kitchens have taken the F&B world by storm, spurred by what Mr. Joey just said, enlarged by the havoc wreaked in the industry by the COVID-19 pandemic. According to some research reports by Acumen, the global cloud kitchen market is expected to reach USD 200 billion by 2027, with an approximate growth of 22% of annual growth rate. But it is in Asia, right where we are, where this seismic shift is happening at lightning speed. In fact, Asia Pacific region accounted for over 60% of the global cloud kitchen market share in 2020. So before we go into the nuts and bolts of how the cloud kitchen impacts the businesses of the panelists and how they have leveraged the cloud kitchen to build their business, let's discuss a little bit about what cloud kitchen is first and foremost. So cloud kitchens, or also known as ghost kitchens, are purpose-built spaces designed for cooking and assembling meals for delivery. These spaces are typically, they don't have storefronts or dining options, and the restaurants in the cloud kitchen sometimes exist purely as virtual brands. So even then, there are different versions of cloud kitchens. So different businesses would have different formats of rendering the cloud kitchen, as you will hear from the panelists later. The simplest one is the cloud kitchen setup that is independent of any restaurant, and sometimes it is either an existing F&B restaurant that sets up a space to prepare their meals designed purely only for deliveries. Another cloud kitchen model that is becoming more popular is the enabler variant of cloud kitchens for rent. In this instance, an individual or organization would build a space and kits it out with commercial kitchens and then provide it with other services like photography, marketing, third-party delivery services, so on and so forth, and then rents it out to people who actually need these services, and they pay a rental fee in exchange for the use of the space. The third version would be a cloud kitchen model that has worked extremely well in the region, which is more a delivery platform-driven kitchen. Finally, we have the full stack cloud kitchen, and this model is unique in that the cloud kitchen entity rents or buys a space, and then they build and fit it out with cooking facilities, curates a list of in-house brands and that they feel fits that particular demographic or in that area, and then develops its own menus, employs their own chef that's on their own payroll to make these meals, and also arranges their own delivery mechanism. You will see that today, the 3 panelists will have adopted 1 or 2 or a hybrid of different versions, and yet some may have even newer models that they have innovated. So let's hear from our esteemed panelists who will share their views on how cloud kitchens have impacted their businesses and how they use that to grow their businesses when they have a franchise model in place. So maybe I start with Kian Peng. Could you share with us why cloud kitchens are gaining popularity? I mean, I know that you use your own version of cloud kitchen, but by and large in the market, cloud kitchens are gaining more and more popularity. Could you share with us why most F&Bs think that it's a good solution for them? And how does that also relate with your business specifically?
I think during pandemic time or during COVID time, I think a lot of restaurants, have been shut down. There's no dine allowed. So if you look at the cloud kitchen, the model of cloud kitchen, where it is right now, is actually you don't need such a big space. So during pandemic, it doesn't make sense for restaurants to operate such a big premises, with all the chairs, tables, where you don't need to have dine, especially now with the safe distancing, with you have to dine in twos and so on and so forth. With so much restriction, it doesn't make sense for restaurants to have such a big space. So it only makes sense to have a restaurant with a very small space, which is at a cheaper rate of rentals, maybe outside the shopping malls, maybe in the housing estates and so on and so forth, where it continues to serve its purpose to do delivery, rather than just to do a dine-in. So I think pandemic accelerate the speed of the cloud kitchen expansion. And the other thing is that using a cloud kitchen is better because you need less manpower. Because pandemic, especially in Singapore, our borders are closed. We cannot get a lot of workers coming in. A lot of our F&B workers in Singapore are predominantly we depend on a lot of foreigners. So with the pandemic, with all the border closed, with a smaller version of a kitchen, I think you are able to serve the kind of food that you want, but at the same time, you lower your operating costs. So this is why I think that why the accelerations of the cloud kitchen kind of go quite fast during the pandemic time. You look at the kind of space that you're operating in, so it doesn't really make sense for us to have such a big dining space. And the other thing is that smaller kitchens is easier to maintain. You cost wise, the operation wise, even the setup cost is much cheaper than to operate a full-fledged restaurants. And then our version of a cloud kitchen is that we are about the same. So we know the two pain point of the F&B. One pain point is the rental cost. So I think rental, if we can solve the rental for the F&Bs, where we can have a shared kitchen, where all the F&B can share the cost of the rental. This will gradually, greatly reduce the cost of the rental. And the other things that we look at another cost is called a manpower cost. So we have a shared manpower cost. So every F&Bs and all the F&Bs and all the restaurants or F&B partners, so they will share two main pain points, which is the shared manpower cost and the rental cost. If they can take care of these two costs, definitely the only cost they have to take care of will be their food cost. So this is our model of a cloud kitchen.
Interesting. And Catherine, how would you respond to the question on why cloud kitchens are gaining popularity, and how has Santan actually been able to leverage that?
So due to COVID, right, where movement is actually restricted, footfall to brick and mortar restaurants, especially those in the malls and stuff, has dropped tremendously. Like individual brick and mortar, let's say just like a bungalow lot or it's just a individual shop lot, is still okay because people feel safer to go to individual places instead of going into a mall, where you get into the crowd and stuff. So we realized that footfall has dropped tremendously, right? And it's still recurring at this moment. So it comes to a point that it got the business thinking where and how, we can pivot the business and de-risk what we call the cost structures of the F&B. And that cloud kitchen model comes into as a feasible solution to solve what Kian Peng has mentioned, right? First thing is the CapEx. To build a brick and mortar in Malaysia, at least 300,000. And then, of course, in terms of OpEx, cloud kitchen gives advantage in terms of OpEx because the moment your store size is smaller, you don't need that many service crew. And first thing, besides the service crew, you don't need to give customer service. Because if you stay in a mall, you have a restaurant to maintain, you have to serve the customer, you have to clean the tables and stuff like that. So in terms of the number of crew that's required in a cloud kitchen, is much lesser compared to brick and mortar. And second thing is that, during COVID, demand for food delivery has increased tremendously because no one can go out and dine in. And when it comes to just delivery business model, cloud kitchen makes more sense compared to brick and mortar, because of rental, right? So one thing that cloud kitchen operator needs to think of is besides, you pay lesser rental, you got to think of the aggregator's commission, because that comes in as a different cost structure compared to brick and mortar. In terms of how it relates to Santan, is that instead of cloud kitchen model, we saw the delivery coming by expanding into satellite kitchens. So we use our existing kitchens and then as a kitchen model, and then expand the delivery radius from the satellite kitchen. That's how we did it, right? Yeah.
Thank you. And last but not least, Joey, I know you have implemented some cloud kitchen yourself, so maybe you can give your take on the question.
Yeah, I think the fundamentals were pretty much covered. The rental, we know it's always been, what's a nice way to put it? It's one of the perennial problems of our industry, right? So we have our rental, we have our manpower, and it's not that we don't want to serve our customers, it's that that's the way the behavioral patterns have changed. We know that there was that shift from table service, and then fast casual was introduced, and then now delivery, which once used to be a sliver of the revenue, has now been flipped, and it's the majority. And I think a lot of brands as well, like for us in particular, I know when we had started out, we knew that, okay, we are gonna have, definitely our customers, they live everywhere, but there are some places where the malls, their rentals are just at a rate where, unless you cater to everybody, such as fast food, for example, it is just not feasible for you to be able to survive there. And the solution that cloud kitchens brings along is that, because it's a much lighter footprint, and if your food is suitable for delivery, if people recognize that the dine-in versus delivery, they feel that like the price is worth it, and they're used to your product and your brand being something that's delivery friendly as well, then you have ridden the wave and kind of like boarded this train, because you have managed to latch your way away from the shackles of how landlords used to have on us. Yes, there are the commission fees, but we are also able to dictate the prices. Customers are aware of this, they've gotten used to this, and from there, that's how the industry moved forward and actually evolved on it. Virtual brands started coming up, and this is something that was very, very hot, because when cloud kitchen, when we were first approached by the very first cloud kitchen operator, one of the biggest things that made my eyes light up was that unlike a physical shop where your branding is set in stone and you have spent so much time and money to set it up this way to fit this brand for these customers, no longer are you bound by that anymore, but rather you can come up with multiple brands, multiple menus, serve all kinds of customers in lunch, in between lunch and dinner, for snack time, dinner as well. And you really maximize your manpower and go on this variable rent model. Yeah. So for us, last time we were thinking within the CBD and maybe with the regional business districts, 5 outlets. And then after that, when we were able to go into the heartlands, we were thinking 10 outlets. And then once cloud kitchens got brought into the picture, all the little small pockets that last time we never thought we would have been able to open up at, or later to Sembawang and Kovan, places that we thought we could find a mall that we could open in. But here we are going live with them last week and next week. So it stretched us and brought the expansion possibilities as well. Now we're on track to 17, 18, and on top of that, 2 virtual brands already. So even though overseas was kind of like restricted by COVID, but this brought interesting twist to the industry and how our journey has been so far.
Sounds like the innovation of cloud kitchens have really done the F&B businesses a lot of good. But of course, like all things, there has to be a balance, right? So before we have everybody rush in and getting into the cloud kitchen business, I thought maybe we should balance it out by maybe also talking a little bit about some of the key operational costs. I mean, that business owners need to be aware of before they take the plunge. When they want to, consider engaging in the cloud kitchen model. So maybe Joey, you could continue with what you were already saying, and if there are some notes or words of wisdom and caution that you might want to share, this is also a good time.
Yeah, definitely. So we've been approached by the likes of to take up, first it was Deliveroo's Edition Eats Kitchens, and then Grab Kitchens, and Foodpanda even had a go at it. Then the Smart City Kitchens now one of the ones that we have the most stores with, and Select Groups one as well. And all of these have quite a similar model, but the one thing that slight difference, which does not make so much, you don't notice it that much in a brick and mortar, but when you go down into a cloud kitchen space, it's so important to pay attention to these details, and that is with the size and the extra specifics about whether there is a internal cold storage within that that can be shared by everybody, whether it's included with the rental, or whether we need to rent out extra ourselves if we need more space. And that definitely is something that needs to come into consideration when you're thinking about your virtual brands, because your inventory is going to increase, but ideally not too much. That's the aim of the virtual brands. So yeah, when we started along the very first location in the CBD, and this was because this was right when COVID had slapped us all in the face. Everything was disrupted. Our landlord was not backing down in the CBD, and we just knew that we had to do a switch. So right behind us was what is now known as the Central Food Co by Smart City Kitchens, and we took up that space. We were like, wow, the rental was a third of our brick and mortar rental, and we thought like, okay, great. We go inside, we maintain our delivery sales, we will slowly start migrating and educate our customers that walk-in is over, is just behind, and all's great. Then after that, as more of the cloud kitchens open and you start comparing what the revenue versus the rent is, then it's the balance. I think that that part of the industry has matured quite a bit,
Right.
very quickly, but quite a bit. Because right now my renewal is happening and my negotiations are able to be significantly lower, which is not ever a case that will ever happen with a retail. So that's the bonus if you look at it that way. But size-wise, right, I think for us, we are so light because we are, for people that don't know what a poke bowl is, we are a marinated sashimi salad, for lack of better words to break it down. So we have minimal cooking, minimal amount of prep that's needed, and no exhaust, none of that stuff. So within the cloud kitchen operators, some of their sites, they have hot kitchens and they have cold kitchens. The ones with the exhaust, you end up paying a higher rental, and it can be a difference of about 20-30% higher compared to the cold kitchens. So for us, that was an immediate advantage. That aside comes some sites have dine-in, some sites are pure delivery. And so I think it's very important for concepts to be frank with themselves or start pivoting if they intend to catch onto more of that delivery crowd. Because if, let's say, you are not serving something that is delivery friendly and people have never considered it as a meal for delivery, if you don't pivot, yeah, you're never going to get onto it.
Right.
So yeah, there's with the price of the rental and the size, depending on what your menu is, for us, because it's so streamlined, 90% of our revenue comes from poke bowls. Our fit out is so simple, and the add-on cost that we have with usually they'll provide a stand-up chiller and a stand-up freezer and a basic sink. Other than that, we are so light. So for us, it's almost like a no-brainer to go inside. It's just about whether there has all customers. But for other, we have seen we have met so many other brands and other kitchens, and we notice some of them, they need to take 2 kitchens, 3 kitchens to operate what they're trying to do. And this is great if you are Jollibee. It's not great if you are the nasi padang store.
Right.
And in the end, you end up biting off more than you can chew. Yeah. So there's so many, but I think those are the ones that I would pin up there as, yeah, watch the size, yes, the rental is a fraction of it. There is still the variable rent as well. But beyond that, I think what's most important is whether you will get the sales, and that needs to come through delivery most of the time. and second of all, whether the size allows you to do what you need to do, because otherwise you're not going to be able to do yourself.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. And Kian Peng, you run a slightly different business model, but what sort of advice, what are some of the key operation costs that you think that entrepreneurs should be cautious of?
I think for us, it's because most of our costs are quite low and ours are more variable. So for us, is that the cost that they have to take care of will be the packaging cost and the food cost. So for example, if you look at the food cost for seafood, typically their food cost is quite high. So look at seafood, normally the cost is about 50% so of the revenue. So this is something that they have to take care of. And the other thing that they will take care of is that cloud kitchen normally it's not very, like what Joey has said, it's not very spacious. So the menu wise, you have to scale down. But if you're a seafood company, definitely you need a big kitchen. So then that will actually add up to your rental cost. So for cloud kitchen, the menu has to be easy, streamlined, easy to go. And then the other things that they have to take care of is that where the cloud kitchens are located, because you don't want to be located in a far stretch or far away ulu places where delivery will take forever, or it's very difficult for people to deliver. You want to be in a populated space where it's easy for you to get customers. Like for example, you're operating right under the HDB estates. This is where you can get your customer space. So it doesn't make sense for you to operate in industry so out of the space. So because of our rider wise, the rider will say, it's so far away, does it make sense for them to go in and go out? So there's one thing that they have to consider. So I think the most important thing is that the menu has to make sense. And then one of their costs, the kitchen, their cooking equipment, so it has to make sense. So I think these are two important factors that I take care of.
Thank you, Kian Peng. And Catherine, what are your views on this?
I agree to both of them, right? Really, it's the food cost. When it comes to food cost, it's like you need a streamlined menu. You cannot do everything in the world. Easy to consume, because that means being able to do the delivery model. And I think a very important thing that I have stressed it many times, because a lot of people think that, oh, okay, you can just focus on delivery, then things are good. It's not really to that extent. You have to consider the aggregators' commissions and the co-fund promotions. Because right now, your business model is 100% on the aggregators platform. They are your only sales channel, right? Not that many people go to cloud kitchens to dine in at this moment in Malaysia. So that really has to take into the numbers, into the P&L before you really embark on getting into this business model. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, not all of you manage a cloud kitchen per se, but if you were to manage a cloud kitchen, do you think if you had virtual brands, you could franchise those brands? Maybe, for instance, Joey, you are saying you're actually managing your franchises through these cloud kitchens as well, correct? So perhaps you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for us, we treated it just like any other. It's just that the lease terms are usually shorter. They offer 6 to 12 months, although you want to take longer, it's possible as well. But unlike the malls and your typical shop houses, you might get a 2, but malls are typically looking for a 3. So we just prorated our franchise fee. Our royalties stayed the same, and it basically just expanded the market cap, the reach that we would have been able to have. And running as a franchise model, then it's straightforward for us as a franchisor. We more sales, more revenue, better for the brand, and for us as well, because we do royalties from the sales. So for us, I think franchisees now is interesting because you almost kind of have 2 proposals for them. You have one which, when it comes to brick and mortar, undeniably, if let's say you have, okay, I'm going to take a live example here. Like you're taking Nix, and then after that you have a cloud kitchen that's close to Nix, and both are probably going to do really well if you're a brand. But if you have the capital investment and you are guaranteed on that mall, that it's dense, there's no competition nearby, all that. The brick and mortar is the bigger risk, but it does give the bigger returns. But with the cloud kitchen, it's lower risk, lower return. But the difference is the barrier to entry is so much lower, because when they account for the franchise fee and the startup equipment, the starting cost is about 20 to 25% of what they would require in a brick and mortar, sometimes even less if it's a mall that requires more security deposit. So that immediately, imagine the people last time they had this amount, right? And then when we can reduce it to, it's an opportunity for even just having 20% of the capital. It's something that made that we were just initially a bit bewildered why during COVID there were still these franchise inquiries streaming in, and it was because once they saw the cloud kitchen, like like I mentioned, you have these two hubs. That ones that there are still the traditional ones who believe that you're gonna look over a team and put in the effort to train and everything. You go big or go home, and you go with the brick and mortar. And then there are the others who are more interested in how delivery has taken over. They're more interested in this new model, and they're very pleased to know that they can take a fraction of what they initially thought a business would cost, and they end up taking multiple sites. So we have one franchisee who takes 5 of the 6 cloud kitchen sites. So,
that sounds amazing, Joey. It sounds like you've just taken the cloud kitchen model and augmented the franchise on top of it and just leverage it to its maximum. Good on you. I'm sure that has given a lot of ideas to other brand owners who are thinking about franchising their cloud kitchen. And Kian Peng, I know that you have a different model altogether. You leverage existing brands and then build the cloud kitchen concept around the brands. Perhaps you could share what gave you the inspiration to do that.
Okay. So the inspiration comes from during COVID pandemic time. So I realized that the F&Bs are facing a lot of problems. The manpower issues and the rental issues. That's why I share that it doesn't really make sense for cloud kitchen. I mean, for kitchens or restaurants to have such a big space. So then I also look around. Actually, there's a lot of space. Quite a lot of space available. And then the rentals are also quite reasonable. So why not we acquire? And then a lot of people are staying at home, right? So it makes sense for us to penetrate into the HDB estates. So we actually move into more like HDB estates rather than the traditional cloud kitchen, where it's an industrial estate. So we want to move into the HDB estates where the populations are, because people are working from home. They want to order something which is nearby. So this is why we are moving to the HDB estates. And because during that point of time, a lot of restaurants are like what Joey and the rest of restaurants are operating in a city area, CBD area, Orchard Road belt, that kind of situations. So they are not really into a HDB estates. So by taking up a space in the HDB estates, which is very nearby to the customers, this is why they are able to kind of like penetrate into the heartlanders. So this one thing that give me the inspiration, and the other inspiration comes from the workers. End of the day, in the cloud kitchen, you don't really need a full able body to be working so hard. First of all, it's behind the scene, right? So basically, what you need to do is that people who are able to pack, able to help you take orders and things like that. And when the rider comes, just pass to the riders, and that's what you need. You don't need to have a pretty handsome boy standing at the door. You don't need that. So what you really need, hands on the deck. That's why we give me the inspiration. Why not you just leverage on the labor force that we had never thought of. Use them to do the packing, take orders, and as long as solve our problem, I think it's a win-win for all. They need a job, you got a job, and the F&B needs a space, we give them a space. And what we did for other F&Bs, traditional F&Bs, for example, the prata shop. So they use us as a test bed. So they use us to come out with their, like virtual brands or new brands, because it's no skin off the back, right? So it's kind of like pivoting from another cloud kitchen, from the real traditional line into another brand, which is also operating from the cloud, but as well as dine-in. So they set up another kitchen or another restaurant, a new brand, but it's sort of associated with the main mothership brand. So then the other thing is, they want to be separated from the mothership brand because they want to use this as a franchise. So eventually they can franchise this sub-brand. So this is how we work with the F&B part of it. So I think it's a win-win for all of us. Yeah.
Okay. And Catherine, what are Santan's plans in terms of franchise? Are there any in the pipeline?
Definitely. In fact, right now we have 12 stores. Out of 12, 10 are actually franchise stores. I believe, in the whole AirAsia ecosystem, we have enough and sufficient resources to make it happen into franchising a cloud kitchen Santan brand, right? Because cloud kitchen model is basically everybody does what they are best at. So for Santan, we are good at doing the food. So we just focus on producing the food, like hands on deck, like what KP has mentioned. And we have AirAsia Food, who is actually our ecosystem delivery aggregator. In AirAsia, there is like huge amount of contactable customer data where we can actually promote Santan to all these existing 500 million customers that we have contact with. And then, of course, we have our own e-wallet, which is BigPay. And we literally have the whole ecosystem to make it happen. It's just at this moment, I'm still studying, the correct partner to do the cloud kitchen with. We believe in shared economy, right? We want to make sure the whole chain is sustainable. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I actually have a few more questions to ask you, but in the interest of time, I wanted to have each of you sum up your word of advice for F&B franchise operators who are thinking of leveraging the cloud kitchen or the ghost kitchens to build their franchise, grow their businesses. So maybe we could have each of you spend 1 minute wrapping up some of the most important highlights or the one important thing you want the F&B operators to bear in mind when they are considering leveraging the cloud kitchen for their franchise expansion. So, Catherine, maybe I'll have you start sharing and wrapping up for us here.
Yeah, I think first thing is to make sure the demo is right. What kind of food you are serving, right? You have to go to your target audience. You cannot be going, selling Indian food to whatsoever race that don't really like it. So getting the demo right is number one. Streamline the menu. Make sure you have a hero range of menu that you're damn good at. And from there, get the cost down. I believe in numbers, right? Work out the numbers. Make sure you take into considerations of all the costs. Yes, the benefits of rental, but don't forget commissions, co-funding, promo, packaging costs, because you have a lot of packaging costs compared to serving a dine-in. And yeah, I think most likely those are the key points. Yeah.
Okay. And Kian Peng, your 1 minute starts now.
Okay. So I think for them to consider is whether it makes sense for them to run a cloud kitchen, whether the food or the experience matters. So for some of the restaurants, it's not about, the food is about the experience. They go to restaurants, they want to enjoy the atmosphere, the kind of surrounding. So it's not so much about food. So bear in mind, some of the food can be on the delivery platform, but it doesn't make sense for them to go inside the delivery cloud kitchen just because cloud kitchen is coming up. Because still a lot of people, I predict after pandemic, a lot of people will be rushing out to the restaurants. This is what we see during the last circuit breaker. So when the circuit breakers were lifted, so a lot of people, a restaurant was fully booked. All your Michelin restaurants, you take about half a year, in advance kind of booking. So I think a lot of people are wanting to go out. So I think there's one consideration they have to take into. So I think more importantly, I think the model has to be right for them.
Yes, definitely. I think that's a very, very important point that you brought up, Kian Peng. But before we run out of time, I wanted to get your last words in for the audience, Joey.
I think I would sum it up in how important sales is. Realizing that this is deliveries world. Be super familiar with the app. Figure out exactly why the brands that are doing well are doing well. And if it's a new brand, you still need to jostle with the algorithm for space above the other big brands. So if it works, great scenario, you can scale across all of them. If it doesn't work, unfortunately, it doesn't work for all of them. So It's all about the sales.
All right. Yes, that's very important, isn't it? That's a very, very important, beautiful final sum up point. So I'm sure everybody agrees that the panelists have brought us amazing insight on the Cloud Kitchen and how it could leverage your franchise business. And with that, I thank you, Kian Peng, Catherine, and Joey, for your deep insights and very, very eye-opening views on the Cloud Kitchen and how it can impact franchisors and what franchisors to be on their growth plans. Thank you very much for your participation today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hsien and fellow panelists.